Good morning and welcome to your final grammar lesson for English 101. This one is a little different, whereas the first three were about various forms of punctuation and correct grammar in terms of where to use a comma or an apostrophe, etc. This is going to take a quick look at verb forms. We're going to go through this fairly quickly because I think a lot of this is probably fairly intuitive, and most of you will know a lot of it, but there are a few things to highlight. So first of all, when we talk about verbs, we have two kinds of verbs. We have regular verbs and irregular verbs, which are essentially exactly what it sounds like. Regular verbs in English are verbs whose past and past participles end in ed, and otherwise look normal. So you just tack on that ending. So live and lived, act and act and acted, ask, asked, jump, jumped. Those sorts of things. There are a lot of irregular verbs, though, meaning that their forms don't follow this pattern. And the PDF on page 213 and 214 has an extensive list. You don't need to memorize it, but you should recognize them. So a verb like sing and sang and sung is irregular. Eat, ate, eaten. Say, said, spoken. Those are all irregular verbs. Now, a couple of pairs of verbs that really get people are sit and set, lie and lay, rise and raise. And the way that you can remember these the best is that one of the verbs is what we call an intransitive verb, meaning that it doesn't have a direct object. And so for those of you that don't remember grade school language arts, a direct object is the thing that is having something directly done to it. I threw the ball. The ball is the direct object. I kicked the couch. The couch is the direct object. I ate the fruit. The fruit is the direct object, because they all have something being done directly to them. Any verb that takes an object is called a transitive verb, meaning it can transfer action to something else. Other verbs are intransitive, meaning that they don't actually do action to something. They may do action with, around, or on something, but they don't do it to something. So the easiest way to tell these apart is that lie, sit, and rise are intransitive. They don't have objects. So the patients lie in their beds. Nothing is actually being done to the bed. That's why this is an intransitive verb. This is a preposition. The word in is a preposition, and that means it's not necessarily taking an object. Visitors sit with them. Now, even though you can say visitors sit on chairs, you're not actually doing anything to the chair. The act of sitting on a chair is not doing something to the chair. You're using the chair. And patients' temperatures rise, or the sun rises. Again, these are intransitive because they don't have an object. So the one that really trips people up the most is this lie and lay one. Most people know the difference between sit and set. But lie and lay gets people. So the way to tell the difference is lie is when you are doing something or people are doing something, not to something. But lay is. So set, lay, and raise, this should be raise, not rise, sorry about that, are transitive. They do things to other things. So orderlies lay the dinner trays on the table. So the dinner trays are the objects. They are being laid somewhere. Orderlies set the trays down. The trays are the things being set, the actions being done to the trays. And nursing aides raise the shades. The shades are being raised. So that's how you tell the difference between those. These are transitive, and these are intransitive. Now, this is what something most people know, the difference between the S form and ED form of verbs. Although some forms of informal English don't utilize these endings, these are important in academic writing. So people talking informally will often drop these because context tells us what we need to know. But when you're doing academic writing, you want to get these correct. So most of you know a lot of this, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. You use an S when the subject is singular, which is strange to us because plural nouns have S's, but plural verbs do not. So singular verbs have an S. So you do this when the subject is a singular noun, or an indefinite pronoun, which is any word like everyone, no one, someone, when we don't have a particular specific person we're being talked about. or when you have he, she, or it. And then the second time that you want to use S is when the verb's action occurs in the present. So the letter asks for a quick response. This is in the present, and this is a singular. Delay, which is a singular, costs money. So that's when we use the S. You need the ED form in 3 different times. 2 that are pretty easy. The verb's action takes place in the past. So we walked 3 miles. And then the other easy one is when the verb form combines with a form of be or have. The company is supposed to be the best. So supposed has a D because it's with the verb to be. Or, he had supposed that he was the best. Or we had asked for directions. And then the second in the middle is the trickier one, is when the verb is a modifier. And that means when it's being used to describe something. So the data concerned is time sensitive. This is describing the data with which we are concerned. And so you would use an ED there. Sometimes you have to include a helping verb in order to have a complete sentence. And again, this is stuff that you learned in grade school language arts, so people just don't know the terminology for. And you don't need to necessarily remember that these are called helping verbs. You just need to recognize a grammatically correct sentence when you see one. So the various helping verbs are verbs like can, may, be, have, or do. And they sometimes have to be utilized to create a grammatically correct sentence. Especially when you have an ing here, which is a gerund. Or progressive participle. You don't need to know those terms for our purposes. So for example, researchers conducting field work all over the world. That's a sentence fragment. There's no actual verb in that sentence because this is the word conducting is describing the researchers. It's not an action. So here you need a helping verb. Researchers are conducting field work all over the world. We have the word be here. Researchers have conducted field work all over the world. You can also use them, you also need to use them, the helping verbs, if the main verb is a form of to be. So, many have been fortunate in their discoveries is correct. But if you have many been fortunate in their discoveries, that's not grammatically correct. You need, have there, you need another helping verb besides the form of to be. Now, you could just say many are fortunate in their discoveries. Certain forms of to be are okay, but not all of them. And then the other thing you need to be careful of is verb tense consistency. It's essential to keep your verb tenses consistent. So if you're writing in the present tense, which from normal verbs means no ending or an S, you need to stay in the present. And the same with past. So we ate food and sat on the benches. Not we ate food and sit on the benches. Here ate and sat are in past tense. But here, ate and sit are not. This is present tense. So you don't want to do this. You don't want to move out of one verb tense into another. That's what it means to keep your verb tense consistent. So everything needs to be in the past, or everything needs to be in the present. And last, you need to work on making sure that you have subject-verb agreement. This means keeping the subjects agreeing in terms of number and person. So I often see this with forms of the verb to be. The forms of the verb to be are am, is, are, was, and were for our purposes. So you would say we are, not we is. I am, not I is. They live, not they lives. He eats, not he eat. So here we've got plural, 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 singular, eat, singular, singular, in first person versus singular, third person, eat. They live, not they lives. So plural and plural. Notice again, they lives, this is a singular verb, even though it's got an S. English is confusing like that. So you don't want to have that with a plural noun. And then he eats, eats a singular, not he eat. So yeah, S and ES work differently for verbs and nouns. SES goes on plural nouns, but SES goes on singular verbs. It's very confusing. And finally, sometimes you'll have multiple subjects. So when there are words separating, well, first of all, when there are words separating subjects and verbs, make sure they agree. The requirements stated in the catalog are not clear. Even though catalog is singular, that's not the subject of the sentence. We're talking about the requirements. The requirements are not clear. So this is plural, so this also needs to be plural. So the requirements stated in the catalog is not clear. That is incorrect because the catalog is not the subject. It's not the thing being described. You need to make sure that you're very careful about identifying what is the actual subject of the verb. Two other things. When the word or nor connect subjects, use the closer noun to determine agreement. So either the painter or the carpenter knows the cost. So because this is the closest noun to the verb. Carpenter is singular, so we use the singular verb, knows. This is easy when both of them are singular, but what if you have this? The mattress, singular, or the bookshelves, plural, need the paint. Because bookshelves is closer to the verb and it's plural, you use the plural. And then last, like I said, indefinite pronouns are any pronouns whose subject, the actual subject, is unclear. So everyone doesn't have a particular subject. Neither does no one, someone, anyone, whoever, everybody, somebody, anybody. Those are always considered singular. So even though everyone would imply more than one person, it is still a singular. So you'll say everyone is running late for the party. Everyone jumps together. Which is a weird sentence anyway. Everyone sits at the table. Even though sits is singular and everyone is implying a lot of people, you still use the singular. Okay, so that's it. Fairly short, I hope. So now you need to take your final quiz. Remember that this quiz includes mostly information from this video, but will also include a few questions and fold in the concepts from the first three. And if you find yourself with any questions before you take it, feel free to ask. Good luck.